Back to that breaking news. CBS stock is down more than 4% now. Sumner Redstone's family fending off that attempt by CBS CEO Les Moonves to bar them from taking steps to protect their control of the media company. It was an offensive move on the part of Les Moonves, and he has lost. And now we are going to talk about the consequences with Bloomberg's David Westin and Nabila Ahmed. David, let me come to you first, because to a certain extent this is a question of personalities. Is Les Moonves, now that he's lost this action, out in some way? Can Shari work with him as a number two, even to Bob Bakish at this point?
Well, first of all, I haven't seen the decision, so I haven't read the opinion. And there always is the possibility of appeal. This is the Chancery Court. There is an appellate process, so we can't rule it out too fast. Certainly, I think Les would think that if he loses this, that he will be replaced. That's part of the concern. At the same time, we have to remember, if he's replaced under the terms of his deal, as they've been reported, he gets a check for $150 million plus incentive, and some people have reported that's $280 million. Sure, so that's not too painful a loss.
Well, something tells me that Les Moonves would rather run a studio for a little while than take that money, at least up front. Nabila, what happens now?
Well, it doesn't matter.
There's a meeting today,
I suppose. So the meeting is at 5. It was scheduled for 5 o'clock today. We don't know if that's now going to go ahead because of the way that the judge has ruled. Obviously, CBS doesn't want to do the merger. You see the shares are falling today. I think it's their biggest intraday loss in several months. Is in more than 3 months, because investors of CBS didn't really want this deal to go ahead, and they were getting really hopeful that this dual-class shareholding structure would be kind of.
You say investors in CBS, but essentially it's National Amusements. They were the investors in CBS, right? With a small little subsection of people who really didn't care what happened because they were going to win either way. I mean, at this point, is this Shari free now to say, okay, we're just taking you?
Well, again, I haven't read the decision, but it looks that way, that essentially, because they have voting control. Now, it's important to remember, they have 80% of the voting shares. They don't have the majority of the economic interest.
No, they only have about 10% of the economic interest.
And that's part of the problem, although that's seen in other companies as well, with dual voting structures. That's why it's built that way. Yeah, Facebook. Yeah. Exactly. So, but presumably, Shari will go ahead, at least this is what Les was concerned about, and replace the board members and replace Les. Ultimately, we have to remember, this is not the first time Shari Redstone has done a version of this. We saw it with Philippe Dumont on Viacom. And so thus far, Shari Redstone looks like she comes by her name fairly. She is her father's daughter, and she gets her way.
So, Nabila, she has said, or at least, you know, NAI has said they don't want to replace all of the directors or anything like that, that it was a bit of hysteria on the part of CBS. But what are you reporting out? What are you hearing?
So we know that she really wanted this deal to go ahead. She was hoping that it would get done the nice way. And when we heard that, you know, that there was some pushback, because remember, CBS did say that they did agree to some kind of economic terms. The pushback was over social issues. And at that point, there was a threat that these people could be removed so she could push through the deal, given that the special committee had agreed economic terms. Now, CBS says that they hadn't agreed those terms, and they've always thought this deal was not in the interest of all of its shareholders.
Well, and we have to remember, when these two companies first split, CBS from Viacom, it was widely expected that Viacom would do much better than CBS. That's what most of the street thought. The fact is, Les Moonves did a wonderful job with CBS, not so much when it came to Viacom. And so you can understand why Les is saying, wait a second, I don't want to put this back together unless I really have complete control to do what I want, because you tried it the other way and it didn't work so well, Redstones.
And David, it's Naira in London, and good to see you both, Nabila as well. For a foreign investor looking at this from the outside, just put in context for us what this means for the media landscape generally, because there are a lot of deals pending at the moment.
There are a lot of deals, absolutely, Naira. And I suppose you could look at it two ways. One is the street right now, as you've seen, at least initially, is responding badly. The street likes Les Moonves because he had such a successful record. At the same time, as all these other deals are pending, CBS is looking like a smaller and smaller fish in a bigger and bigger pond. And so I think perhaps what Shari Redstone is saying, we need to get mass, we need to get scope, just the way Disney is trying to buy a lot of the 21st century assets. There are so many of these deals being made. And so in the short run, the concern is who's going to run this thing if it's not Les, because we know Les, and Les has been very successful. In the longer run, I think the strategic question for investors is, do you need mass and scope and scale?
I'm not actually looking at what Google's, Facebook's, Apple's, Netflix shares are doing at the moment, but is this positive for them?
Well, it depends on whether you think that this newly combined company is going to be an effective competitor with Google and Facebook. And I wouldn't want to speak for them. I would be surprised if they're quaking in their boots right at the moment. But I mean, it's not good for them, I think it's fair to say.
And certainly in terms of shareholders and the makeup of the company, it certainly hasn't set a precedent in any way on voting structure or anything like that, right?
Exactly.
Guys?
I mean, that would have been the real landmark decision.
Yeah.
That would have been the big sort of shift if that had come out. But that hasn't happened. So you would think that with those companies, with those structures, they're probably safe for now.
So, you know, I have to posit this. In a way, this was going nowhere. There was stagnancy. Shari did not want to pull the plug and say, we are doing this forcefully. Les was waiting for something to happen. Could you see a scenario where he would now say to Shari, look, you forced my hand, I had to do something, we had to get this moving, we were in a complete stalemate. But, you know, really, I'm still the best person to run this combined company. Take some director positions, I'll run it all.
I can see anything. And listen, I know Les well. Les is a great executive and a very shrewd negotiator. And I can't imagine a world in which he said, look at Shari, you've won this round, but I could still make it very difficult for you. So let's sit down and figure out a way we could get along together. Leave me in charge. Let me have certain key people in places. Let's talk about who's on the board. Can I envision that? Certainly. It depends on really Shari, I think, at this point.
Yes, and Nabila, it kind of gives her as well a chance to sort of say, well, Les, I'm sorry you lost this round, and in return, please stay on, but you have to take Bob Bakish with you.
Exactly, and look, he had said that he would, Les had said that he would stick around for 2 years. So her whole thing was, well, what happens when you leave in 2 years? Who's going to be the successor? So maybe they can work together on that somehow and figure out, I mean...
I do think there's another possibility, and this is all speculation. There was talk, even in the litigation, that Les was saying part of the problem was Shari Redstone had discouraged others, such as Verizon, from buying CBS. It's possible the real issue here is not so much I don't want to be with Viacom. I want the possibility, Les Moonves, to sell this to some other party for a better term. And that, I think, would be a fundamental difference in the viewpoints of Shari Redstone and Les Moonves. Hard to really get over that gap. Absolutely.
The thing is, Verizon has come out and said that they don't want to buy a content company, but Les Moonves was courting others and talking to other companies about a possible merger. The problem for NAI is that it creates a massive tax burden on them if they were to sell either CBS or Viacom on their own from under NAI, and that's going to be the question that she'll be thinking about.
I want the control room to take my terminal at the moment because we have the MGMT function at CBS, and I just wanted to show you who the directors at CBS are. You've obviously got Les Moonves at the top as chairman, but there are, you know, 20 directors. Who goes, who stays? I mean, who's in one camp and who's in the other, David?
Well, most of these people are in Les Moonves' camp. Over time, Les has gotten people that he trusts and knows very well to be on his board, as most effective chairman and CEO do. But the real question is who Shari wants to put on the board and exactly what their intuition is and whether they'd be acceptable to Les, I would say, at this point.
Do we have any idea, Nabila?
She has her picks and she has been speaking to people that she would like to go on the board. But to David's point, Les doesn't want a board that's going to be just doing her bidding and won't allow the management to do what's best for the company.
And in fairness to the investors, if you think about it, you don't want to be invested in a company where this battle goes on and on and on. Now in the boardroom instead of the Delaware Chancery Court. At some point, you need some quietude. You need to move forward with your strategy because there's a lot of work that needs to be done, particularly on the Viacom side.
Yes, and very briefly, Nabila, what do you think investors are doing right now? Cheering or breathing a sigh of relief?
Well, CBS shareholders are not happy because they did want this voting structure to go away that would have freed CBS up and made it very nimble to do other deals. I would say Viacom shareholders are pleased, though.